All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Eric Jr. podcast. I'm your host, Ray Stiles. A Saturday afternoon edition here with Jess the Creamster, the dynamic tandem in the low block. How you
Yes,
doing, Cream?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We are coming at you a day late and a co-host short, but we got a jam-packed show. I'm excited. Eagles made some moves. NBA trade deadline, of course. It's been a pretty packed week for Sixers and Eagles fans, so let's just get right into it.
Yeah. The podcast we were planning to do during the week was going to be George Hill related, and then
Yes.
we fortunately for us, like this would have been a class. We were setting ourselves up for a classic issue where we recorded
Yes.
8 hours before the Carson Wentz trade, and then we do another pod 8 hours before
Embiid and
like 24 hours before the draft pick trade.
yeah. And
Oh yeah,
then
and the Embiid injury too. Yeah,
we
like
recorded that night.
that night, Embiid. Yeah, we would have had our triple crown right there. That's like we're
Yes.
like American Pharaoh. The
Yes.
the trade bonanza kind of started off with the Miami 49ers deal for the number 3 pick,
Hmm.
and we see if you hear my dog in the background, she's just rolling around. The The 49ers are clearly jumping up to take their guy. Cream, we'll just start there, and then we'll kind of develop it into the Eagles stuff. What do you think
Sure.
the 49ers want to do at that number 3 pick?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It seems to be like a situation where do they really even care which quarterback falls to them? It's got to be quarterback motivated. You don't, you know, trade up from 12 to the 3 spot to take any other position, right? It's got to be a quarterback. They need a quarterback. But they're in a weird situation where they don't know what the Jets are going to do it too. So they kind of have to be comfortable taking either.
I
It
think they
reminds
do.
me.
I think they do. I think Wilson is pretty locked in at number 2 at this point.
You do. So you think Lawrence 1, Wilson 2, and then they're comfortable with either Fields
Or Lance.
uh, or Lance. Yeah, I mean that's definitely possible. It reminds me of the Eagles trade up where in that 2016 draft, golf wasn't exactly like blowing the doors off everybody. There was a little bit up for grabs in terms of who was going to be that number 1 pick. And when the Eagles made the trade, obviously, you can say it really didn't work out for either team. But this is a scenario where, San Francisco obviously on the cusp of contention. Like they need a real established quarterback. And this is the draft to do it. I mean, there's a lot of top guys to like Justin Fields or Lance. I think you're going to find people who love them. So I can't say I disagree with the trade. I mean, the price seems pretty reasonable. The 12th overall pick next year, and a pick the following year, and then a 3rd-round pick as
It's
well.
it's
Miami gets.
pretty expensive. I would
Yes.
say I mean, you say a pick this year, a pick next year. Like those are firsts. Like
Yes.
it's a net 2 firsts and a third for Miami to go down 9
Correct.
spots. That's pretty steep, but
Yeah.
if you are confident you are getting a guy who's going to absolutely be a Pro Bowler or something in Shanahan's system, it's probably worth it. The
Right.
funny thing is, there's a couple things based on what you said. The funny thing is, the list of like trade up in the top 5 guys is terrible. It's
Right.
like
It's
it's
not great.
Goff and Wentz, and then it's
Right.
RG3, Sam Darnold, Mitchell Trubisky, like
Risky, of course.
Trubisky to go from 3 to 2, like so stupid.
Sanchez, I think, was a trade up into
It's
the top 5. Yeah.
it's a
Not a
mess.
great.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
Um,
Hopefully, Justin Fields can kind of reverse the curse a little bit. But you're absolutely right that the history does not point towards success for San Francisco. But it does. I mean, it does bode well for Miami, who, you know, grabbing those extra picks. They already got their quarterback, fully taking advantage of the field. That's a really good move by Miami.
The interesting thing is, I was listening to something today, and Chris Sims actually thinks Mac Jones might be the guy there, which he does seem
That
to
was
be
a wild
rising.
take. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely started like immediately after the Super Bowl. If you were like looking at a mock, he definitely started like 25th or so,
Right.
like a late first, second round prospect, and then he's been like solidly in the teens. And then if this transitions to a double first round pick trade up to take number 3 overall, that's a ridiculous rise.
That's a That'd be astronomical. With the quarterbacks in this draft and the talent that are already up there, I really can't wrap my head around taking a guy like Mac Jones, who I think people have mixed feelings about. Obviously, he was just pretty impeccable at Alabama. You can't really poke any holes in it, but like the dude like never even like faced a third and long. Like he just the least amount of like um adversion to like playing quarterback that anyone's ever played under is that Alabama team with those studs at wide receiver, a stud running back. Like this dude faced zero actual pressure all year. How can you evaluate a guy like that? I know like guys like Justin Fields, has his issues, and then obviously Trey Lance is a pretty unknown guy at this point at the highest level. But um, going up to 3 to take Mac Jones would be pretty incredible to me. I can't see that's the take. Chris Sims is known for these wild quarterback evaluations. Sometimes he gets them right. He was right on Lamar
His
Jackson.
his
Uh,
yeah his past couple years, like he's on like a 3-year bender right here where he's been in on certain guys. Like I think he was in on Josh Allen and Lamar
yeah,
Jackson. I think he's been in on a couple people that um were not at all consensus people when they were taken. I mean, Josh Allen, I thought he was going to be terrible, man. I
yeah,
thought the Bills were a good spot slash bad spot. They were a good spot in terms of his skill set. Like, hey, you need
right.
a quarterback that can throw in snow, throw in bad wind, like play like Jared Goff is a disaster in Buffalo. Josh
Right,
Allen is like the perfect guy for Buffalo in terms of physical traits, but
right.
he was like a 50% completion guy for 3 straight years in college. Like I just did not think it was going to work out. Um, there's definitely a lot to like with these QBs. Mac Jones, like you and Jake hated the Patriots offseason. I think they're going to immediately be 9-7 ish to like
Right.
11-5 again. I think they are absolutely going to be in the mix for the division, and I think them taking him at like a mid
Yeah, they're
first, like Mac
15 right
Jones,
now. Yeah.
that's like a perfect offseason in my mind. If I
Right.
am trying to see a quick rebound for Bill Belichick, like if I'm them, I'm pretty excited because you have Cam for a year in case Mac needs more development, and then you have a huge influx of talent coming in, both from free agency and the opt-out guys coming back. Like
hmm
the potential for an 11-5 season is definitely there with potential for a quarterback that you got in like the mid first round because you were abnormally bad. Like I really think the
Right.
Patriots could be like a good landing spot for him. That said, if he's now in the mix for the 3rd overall pick, it's just pretty crazy.
Yeah, a lot of people have him going at 9 to Denver. That's a pretty popular, or 8 to
Also much
Carolina.
higher. Like that's
Yeah,
even that is just like much higher than I was thinking we would have, and we're still like several weeks away.
exactly. Yeah. No, it's you're absolutely right. Well, why don't we, speaking of quarterbacks, why don't we first I want to talk about the report and the Eagles trade. Um, the report being that the Eagles were trying to get into the top 3 to draft one Zach Wilson. Obviously, that never materialized. Um, Potentially, they heard the same things that San Francisco heard, that the Giants, or I'm sorry, the Jets are pretty locked in at Wilson at 2. What did you make of that report?
Um, I don't know. I just I don't want to buy it at face value, to be honest.
Right,
And
right.
people were like taking it to heart immediately. And then I think
Hmm.
Rappaport had to send out like a clarification. I forget what his follow-up tweet was, but it was kind of walking it back a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, he's a impressive prospect. So I mean, they should probably be looking at it.
Right.
But like I've stated several times, I'm glad, man. You already invested a second round pick in Jalen Hurts, and you have a million holes. I think it's absolutely a good idea to let it roll with Jalen Hurts for at least a season. See what you have. The team is not Super Bowl bound, so even if he's not a Pro Bowl level quarterback or like a Super Bowl or playoff esque quarterback, I think
Hmm.
having a fun, exciting, mobile QB who's really disciplined, a great locker room guy. Like I want to give him a year, and they
Yeah.
signed Joe Flacco, which is totally fine, and that's exactly who I want. Like
Yeah.
a decent veteran who is going to be clearly the backup coming into camp, and you have a year of true evaluation for Jalen Hurts, starting quarterback. And then if he's a disaster, you're probably bad again because the roster
Yeah.
is not that good.
Even
And
if he's good, you're still not. You don't really project this Eagles roster to be, you know, knocking on the playoff door anytime soon.
no, and then you can kind of elect whether you want to go
Right.
with him, but spending more draft capital to trade up for a guy um, where if they weren't locked into if they were locked into Wilson, you're going from 6 to 2. Yeah, you're at least probably, if you're going up 4 spots, you're giving up probably a first and a second or something. It's tough,
Yeah.
man. So
No, no,
I,
absolutely.
I'm all right with it. I'm all right with not going for Zach Wilson and just staying with Jalen Hurts. I like Jalen Hurts.
Me too. And now we can get into the trade that Dolphins and the Eagles made. These were made like I want to say like 20 minutes after each other. After the Dolphins moved all the way down to 12, they decide, you know what? Actually, we liked being up near the top of the draft. Let's go back up to 6. Eagles trade down with them. Doing so, they pick up an extra 2022 first. What 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 was your thought process of that trade? I was pretty surprised.
I was surprised, and honestly, I kind of hate it. Like I
Yeah.
I hated it. I hated it. I hated it at
Hmm.
the time. I've softened my position to
Right.
just like not liking it, but like I was pretty disappointed, and it wasn't even knee jerk, man. Like it's pretty justifiable to me to not do this because I've seen articles and I've read articles like the value and like how they have those like point systems where it's like the first overall
Sure.
pick is worth like 5,000 points or whatever,
Yep.
and then each pick goes down by whatever amount. So
Yep.
like the Eagles, I think, are sitting in like the fourth most valuable position for like the next 3 drafts because they do have the potential for 3 firsts next year.
Sure.
So the analytics will show you, or even if that even is technically analytics, but like
Very old school analytics, but yeah, it absolutely is.
yeah, and so the value to ratio of like okay, move down 6 picks and get a first is on its head a valuable transaction, but
Sure.
Howie Roseman is still drafting the players, man, and I don't appreciate going from elite prospects to B plus prospects. And people
Yes.
can say like Devontae Smith is still an elite prospect. He's 170 pounds. Jamar
Yep.
Chase is so squarely the number one wideout and
Hmm.
so clearly like the AJ Green, the Larry Fitz of this draft. Like he's clearly the A1 prospect at the position. And Kyle Pitts is so clearly the A1 at his hybrid tight end position. Like those were weapons that you like clearly had in your crosshairs and things just played out
Yes.
totally in your favor because I had a 20-minute stretch there where I was like looking it over and I'm like, there's no way the first 3 picks aren't QBs. So then you
Yes.
have, Sewell, Chase, Pitts, and then Lance, like, and Fields also all in the mix for the next 3 picks. Between
You're
Pitts
gonna
and
get one of them,
Chase,
yeah.
you're getting one of them. You're getting an A plus prospect. You're
A
getting,
foolproof prospect. Like,
yeah, you're
a
getting,
prospect that like Howard Roseman can't like his evaluation method can't screw up is like part of it for me, you know? Like the you're absolutely right. The level of like talent that the guys at 6 versus the guys at 12, it doesn't seem like a big drop off, but I think it absolutely is in terms of like what can go wrong. Like those guys' floors, Chase and Pitts, like their floor is like, all pro player still.
That's not. I would say their floor is a little lower than that. Like maybe they're just really good, but I would say yes, you are absolutely expecting at least 3 Pro Bowls out of the person.
Right.
So it's like I come back around and the value of 2 firsts with like a 50-50 hit rate is less to me than like essentially let's say a 90% hit rate for a key position, especially when you're trying to nail something that they haven't done for a decade. Like they have not had good wide receiver play since they got rid of Deshaun Jackson the first time, and
Yes.
they are trying to nail down this position. They spent 5 picks on it last year and had garbage production again. And then you have the AJ Green, the Julio-esque prospect that people usually are trading 5 picks to move up and get. And he's sitting there within probably a 50-50 shot he's there. And maybe you need to trade up like a slot to take him.
Right.
And you trade down and now they're like in the Devontae Smith, like Jalen Waddle, like they're in that pick range and they're behind the Cowboys and the Giants. It's just
Yep.
like your percentage of how he's screwing this up just went up exponentially. Like I'm gonna go through here.
100%.
He's been in the mix for making decisions since 2010. He's been at the front office for a decade. You have Brandon Graham, who was like a hit. Lane Johnson, you can't even credit him. That was a chip draft. That was a chip run draft.
100%.
And then you had Fletcher Cox was a hit, and the rest is crappy. Carson Wentz, I would still consider a hit. The guy made a Pro Bowl. Like the injuries were more of an issue. But over the last 10 years, you have Watkins, you have Marcus Smith, you have Nelson Aguilar, you have Derek Barnett, you have Andre Dillard, you have Jalen Rager, and Jalen Rager I'm not out on, but like these guys were guys that you were picking 21st, 26th, 20th, 14th, and 22nd. Those are mid-first round picks. You just moved yourself into the mid-first round. Like, I don't trust this guy to execute on 2 picks. I would have rather just taken the elite prospect.
100% agree. I 100% agree. Like, the crapshootiness of the draft increases exponentially, like, as you go farther down. When you're in, like, the 5 or 6 range and you're getting these, these elite positional players like Chase and Pitts, like just like the hit rate on those kind of guys is just so much higher than even when you go down to 12. Like last year's 12th overall pick was Henry Ruggs, and he was an elite prospect, and he didn't eclipse 500 yards.
I believe your number one choice. If I do,
I don't think he was. I'd have to go back and double check.
I think he was
higher. I think I was higher on Mr. Judy. I think I had Judy 1, but we'll check the tapes. We'll go back and listen to it. But the point is, Henry Ruggs, good prospect. Jury's still out.
Can still be really good. But
could still be really good, but jury's definitely, like, he's not a no-brainer guy. Like, and that's just the kind of thing that you're just tempting fate, because when you have Howie Roseman as the general manager, like adding another first-round pick in theory is good, and in theory it like helps the rebuild kind of thing. But like, not only are you just taking more of a risk now, you're not even giving Jalen Hurts like the best scenario to evaluate him with, because I mean, I don't know what they do at 12. Maybe they get Devonta Smith, or maybe they go some other route. But like, if you would have given him Chase or Pitts, like that's a real. I'm comfortable with that level of evaluation. Like if he can't make it work under those scenarios, then yeah, I'm comfortable moving off him. But now, like, we're going to be in this period where like there's no guarantee that the offense is going to be any better next year. And like, how do we know if it's him or if it's the offense? We don't. We got this new head coach. We're going to be trying to evaluate so many different things next year that I think adding a guy like Chaser Pitts just brings a level of stability to like that you can kind of look everything else, through that lens of like, that this guy's good. That this guy's going to be, getting open, being a target, like producing.
And even if it wasn't, and even if
Yeah.
it wasn't them, if it was like, so there's going to be 4 QBs probably taken before they pick. So they're essentially working under the assumption of a top 3 best player available. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like you are
Absolutely.
getting one of the
Absolutely.
3 non-QB best player available. So that includes a guy like Sewell. So you have,
Absolutely.
you have a 100% guarantee of having Pitts, Chase, or Sewell, which are like pretty essentially, outside of Trevor Lawrence, like the consensus least bust potential players.
Yeah.
And
Elite prospects in their own right, like at their
yes,
positions, as good as it gets,
and
basically.
you get into this tier 2, and
Yeah.
I would be totally fine if they took Micah Parsons at 12. If he falls
Mhm.
to that point, I would have honestly probably been cool with him getting taken at 6. He is kind of in that tier.
Mhm.
Um, if he kind of blows up at the combine, you know what I mean? If he just has like
Yeah.
that Luke Kuechly-esque
Yeah.
combine where it's like so obvious he's going to be fantastic.
At
The
his pro day, I think he ran a sub 4.4
Yeah,
40.
yeah. So he's on that trajectory to
Right.
probably not be there at 12, but he could be.
Right.
So there
And
are
then
people,
you got some cornerbacks that are highly rated,
but the
but
bust rate on the bust rate
exactly.
on corners like is so bad,
Yes.
and I am gonna come in and we're gonna get or what's his name? Yeah, Surtain from Alabama, and he's gonna be stiff, and he's gonna not, run, twist his hips
Hips are
fast
going to
enough.
be a little, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be like, oh my God, we're in for it again. Like, and then now you essentially traded down for no reason. Um,
Yes.
the because you're at net 1 first round pick, because this guy's a stiff and he can't play, and so it's just it's Howie banking on Howie. You know what I mean? Like he is saying
That's what it is. Yeah.
I can dunk the ball twice rather than getting one. And it doesn't matter whether I'm sixth or 12th overall, but there's obviously going to be prospects that slide down. Like I said, there's going to be possibly 5 picks that are essentially non-starters for the Eagles if they're not doing the
Right.
QB thing. So it's them betting on themselves, but man, your track record sucks. And the bust rate on the positions outside of what they kind of need a little of everything, but like you had 3 A+ prospects in your lap, and if you go in taking like a tier 2 corner or something, the bust rate on those guys is so high.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what we're talking about. Like that the risk of like dropping down from 6 to 12. Like you don't pick teams don't get to pick in those top range of the draft every often. Like you have to nail those picks, and you're just like increasing your risk rate right now with a front office that no one believes in. Why should we have any belief that this front office is going to nail that 12th pick? Like there's just no evidence for it. Like, and that's what's frustrating. That this is the move that they do instead of just taking like a blue chip prospect. If this draft was different and you didn't have those guys at the top and you were like, choosing between like, bad fits or just guys that you couldn't rely on, then I understand trading back. But like when you have a chance to take an elite prospect, like 99 times out of 100, the best move is just to take him, right? Like just take it and work everything else out later. So what? You don't have an extra pick in 2022. Like it's frustrating.
Yeah. Um, it could work out fine. So
Sure.
and if they get a juicy
Yeah.
first round next year with like the Colts selection works out, and then they have their own
Mhm.
Miamis and Indies, that's definitely appealing and ammunition to go get the top QB in that class if it looks like Hurts isn't the real deal. So it's
We're
it's
not. Yeah, I want to clarify that we're not saying like the value is bad. Just like
the
in the
people who have to
situation.
execute are
Yes,
not trustworthy.
exactly. And like just for the Eagles specific situation, I wouldn't make this trade. I
No.
wouldn't. I wouldn't like trade out of that the top of the draft to take a just definitely like a second tier prospect.
All right. Um, do you have anything else on this? Do you have anything on the other teams in the first round? Anything on like the Cowboys and Giants? You think they're happy about this?
I mean, I think they got they got to be ecstatic. Like they're just, or at least like Eagles fans are furious about it. Like that's the one thing I think everyone's kind of all the Eagles fans are kind of agreed on. And this was a pretty polarizing trade. A lot of people love trading back. Normally I do. Normally I love it, but in
Max from
this,
Staten Island loved it.
he loved it. It's interesting. We'll have to get his take on it soon. But it is going to be infuriating when like you know you're watching these guys fall, and like the Cowboys come up and the Giants come up, and you're just like, recent memory isn't very good with that kind of thing. Of like, it's going to be a really tough watch on draft night. Like, you're waiting for these guys to fall, and just to have them go to the Giants or the Cowboys after you like were above them is, I mean, it's a shitty thing. It's a shitty feeling. I think we got to give props to the Dolphins. I think they executed this pretty perfectly. Um, they didn't want to take QB at 3. They trade down to 6. They get an extra third and a first round pick in 2023, and they get to take one of these guys. They get to take Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase or whoever.
Yeah.
I think they definitely deserve some props, and that's a team on the rise. So I wouldn't. A lot of people are debating on where that pick from the Dolphins is going to come in. I wouldn't be banking on it being a particularly high pick. They seem like they're pretty well run right now.
It could go either way.
Yeah.
If Tua is just actually bad, then
Yeah, that would be
they could just peter to like a 7-9 season, which is totally possible. I mean, he's
That's
coming
possible. Yeah.
he's coming off of a massive injury that could have like just changed his ceiling for sure.
Right. No, it's possible.
I just I just look at it and I'm like, man, we're gonna have like Devontae Smith, and then he's gonna get crunched and hurt, and we're gonna be like, man, what were we thinking talking ourselves into a guy that's 170 pounds? It's like, yeah, I don't know. It happens. Okay, so we have the NBA deadline came and went. I've been consuming a lot of content about it, so I don't have a ton of interest in talking about like Vucevic or anything that's like not super Sixers pertaining. We'll just get right into the George Hill acquisition. Cream, what's the ceiling at now? What's the mood post Lowry? How do you feel about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think going into the trade deadline, everyone was kind of prepared. If this doesn't work out, there are guys, second tier guys that are going to be available that could absolutely help the Sixers, and that's where George Hill comes in. Veteran guy. We don't need to explain like what he's going to bring to the team. Everybody knows he's a good shooter, veteran presence, good ball handler, lots of playoff experience, right? And for the amount of assets that we gave up, I would say that's a pretty good deal. I think it was just 3 second-round picks and a couple of guys. Tony Bradley was the most consequential player. I mean, you got to feel pretty good about that, I think. The issue is, like, when you don't get Lowry, how much does this really raise your ceiling? And Sixers fans are definitely divided about where, like, the Sixers are in relation to the other top teams in the East. Like, some people are like absolutely the Sixers are the best team. They're the ones, nobody can stop Embiid, yada yada. Like, this trade is great, is perfect. And then there's people who are a little more afraid of Brooklyn, who are, skeptical of this team's playoff performance. I think rightly so. Who thought that this team needed kind of a jolt, to raise their ceiling. I would say that I'm a little bit in the second group. I thought that this was an opportunity to really upgrade your team and really go for it, like go all in on this team that's kind of performing at kind of, just like every aspect. Every aspect of them is just like through the charts. I thought this would have been a good opportunity to really, go for it. I don't know what your thoughts on the non-Lowry trade versus getting a guy like George Hill were.
Like I've been saying for the past couple weeks, it was always value dependent. I kind of settled in at like Matisse and a first, or Maxey and a
Right.
first, and then whatever you needed to do for the salary, but with the two main assets being those pieces, and anything more, two firsts or both young guys or something, I was just out on it. So I'm not gonna act like either of us know what the asking price really was, but I
Right.
assume it was probably getting at least a little bit more picks involved or something like that.
Yeah.
So to see it come and go, I was okay with it.
Yeah. Toronto's mindset in hindsight seemed to be that they were always comfortable keeping Lowry and were only ever going to trade him if somebody kind of knocked the doors, knocked their socks off with the trade offer. And Miami and the Sixers, played it as well as they could. They weren't going to give up too much. I can't blame them for that. It just like, to me, it seems like a missed opportunity. This is the second time where you've had a chance to acquire a game-changing level player, and I know Lowry isn't at the same echelon as a guy like Harden, but he does have a certain cachet, the playoff experience and the skill set that the team really was missing. I felt like that was just such a perfect pick to, bow out of it because you weren't comfortable with maybe throwing in an extra pick or something. That seemed to be, I don't know. We'll see how the season plays out. I'm left a little disappointed. Of course, as I say this, the Sixers are playing amazing, even without Embiid and everybody,
And
including Danny.
that was a driving factor of my hesitance
Right,
to mess things up. Like Danny Green
right.
is becoming very valuable,
Hmm.
and having to integrate new pieces and having to disrupt and possibly have less shooting on the team,
Yeah.
was not really something I was looking at as much of a positive.
No, it's definitely true. It's where these kind of discussions are like on a dime, and like Daryl Morey was like factoring in every single thing, like Danny Green's presence on right down to like Danny Green's presence on the team, which has clearly been a positive effect. Um, his teammates clearly respond to him, and he absolutely would have been missed. It's just a weird spot to be in. This team feels like they're still like one piece away, and maybe Hill comes in and he's kind of just like exactly what they need, just as like a little extra boost to help everybody else kind of reach their heights. But it's gonna like we don't know. We're not gonna know until the playoffs come around and we see in a playoff series against these top teams. Oh, this is what we're missing. Oh, this is what's working. This is what isn't. So it's impossible to say right now. I would say that this was the safe option. They went the safe route. They went long view over short term, right? Like they're keeping Maxey, keeping Thibault, keeping these picks, not just for the sake of those assets, but for potentially moving forward uh, in creating the next package for a superstar. If a Bradley Beal becomes available, you still have assets to do that. So I can't knock them for it. I was just I would have liked to see them be a little bit more aggressive. And and you're right. We don't know exactly what was offered and what wasn't, but I think unlike the Harden trade, Toronto was absolutely willing to deal with the Sixers. It wasn't a case of like, oh, we just got screwed out of it or anything. Like there have been reports that Toronto was expecting actually a deal to be finalized before the Sixers dropped out. So it's just a case of not wanting to go far enough.
You could also know he's going to Miami too. They could also know like, hey, this is a pure half season
rental. It could be. Yeah, you're right. That could have been a factor as well. There's so many unknowns with Lowry's situation. We know, he loves that Jimmy Butler guy for some reason. Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't know if you're keeping him long term, or even how much you want to keep him at long term, given his age and the salary he would have been commanding. All that went in, and I don't disagree with what Daryl Morey did, like I said, but we'll see what happens the rest of the year and into the playoffs, because this was really the last chance the Sixers got to improve their team, and we'll see if it was enough.
Yeah. I would say I'm pretty happy with the team. Are you gonna be worried all about George Hill being the guy who missed the free throw in that infamous JR forgetting the score?
I mean, clearly doesn't get enough. Like, that isn't talked about enough. That moment doesn't happen if George Hill hits the free throw.
So they tie it 107-107, and then he clanks the thing with 4 seconds. I just looked it up with 4.7 seconds left. It's 107-107, and he clanks a free throw in the finals. That's not great. Thing.
A career 80% free throw shooter, like, that's tough, man.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We can talk a little bit about that if you want, of what like the rotation would be once Hill gets here. I think most people are expecting him to join the team soon and then be available. Daryl was pretty optimistic, saying it would be a matter of days rather than weeks before he was available to play. So we should be seeing him relatively soon. Hopefully it takes him less time to get here than last year's trade deadline acquisitions, where we didn't see them for like 2 weeks after acquiring him, which was very weird.
So we'll just do it as this. We'll do it as this.
Sure.
The assumption, let's assume the starting five is the starting five of Tobias, Ben, Danny Green, Seth Curry, and Embiid.
Yes.
The normal five that we're tipping off opening night. And then a typical playoff run, you have about nine people. So you have four bench guys. We have the roster set. No buyouts yet, but just give me your 4 that are actually in this rotation in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yep. I think George Hill is absolutely going to be one of them. He's going to be the first guard off the bench, just for all the reasons that we traded for him, to be that shooter. He's still a decent defender, even at this age. He's still got great length and great instincts, and his experience in ball handling should be an asset to the Sixers. He's going to be the first guy off the bench. Then I think Thibault is as really the only wing who can defend off the bench. I think he's absolutely a lock.
It's kind of between Thibault and Cork.
I agree. I'm saying it's Thibault. Right now, I think it's Thibault because you got George Hill. He's going to bring shooting. I'm saying Thibault. Dwight is obviously the backup center right now. We'll see what happens. We'll talk about Doc Rivers at a later date. I have some issues with him.
He's got issues with you, Cream. He's got issues with you.
A lot of people do, so I can't say I'm surprised, but he's got issues not playing a traditional center. So I would have to assume that Dwight Howard's going to be the backup center for the playoff run. He's going to soak up those minutes that Embiid sits. And then I think Shake Milton is going to be the other player as the the only real scoring option off the bench. And, and with those four guys, I think you're really relying on Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons to play 40 plus minutes at a high level because they don't really have an option off the bench that inspires any type of confidence. Um, the guys you're leaving off that list, obviously Furkan and Mike Scott and Maxey, who I think just needs
Maxey is
another.
absolutely not a part of the
Yeah,
playoffs.
he just needs some time to soak up things. But I think right now I would say that those are my nine. Shake, Thibault, George Hill, and Dwight Howard are the four off the bench.
I think it's enough, man. I think they.
Yeah,
I think if things gel
right.
and they have a healthy 9 players, even if let's say Thibault or somebody, somebody who's not a core person, let's say like Seth Curry is injured and George Hill becomes his role and you need to slide up like Korkmaz or something, like
Not the end of the
rel-
world.
assuming relative health, I think they absolutely are in the mix for the title.
For sure. They're definitely going to be in the mix. What I was talking about earlier is more of just you know, not being satisfied with being in the mix, trying to jumpstart the team into a little bit of a higher tier. But this team is absolutely capable of making the finals. I don't want to make no bones about it. The way they're playing right now, we expect Embiid to come back pretty soon, if reports are to be believed.
What are you reading? What are you reading there? I avoid Embiid
Right.
injury news like the plague.
Yeah, so we haven't heard too much. The last thing, I think it was maybe last week that we heard from Shams that Embiid was feeling well and that they weren't looking to, that it was possible even that he would be pushing that 2 week, or that, whatever it was, 2 weeks out, and he could possibly even play before that. And then there was another one that they were going to be cautious with Embiid, but they haven't experienced any setbacks. Basically, I think positive news. I believe today is the 2 weeks mark since the MRI. I think that was 2 weeks ago today.
So Shams is a
So,
liar. That's what you're saying.
well, yeah. Basically, he was reporting that Embiid was feeling great and that he could potentially play earlier than 2 weeks. And then the Sixers kind of came back, and it was probably through Pompey, saying that they were going to be cautious, but that he was feeling good. So we should be hearing from him, any day now. We should get a report. I think their first home game. They're still on the road trip right now. They're in LA, and then I think they go to Cleveland. Let me just pull it up. And then their next home game is until like Tuesday or Wednesday. So maybe that would be okay. So they play in Denver on Tuesday. Their first home game is until next Saturday. So I don't know what his timeline is, if they're going to bring him, they're going to meet the team, but we should be hearing an update, in the next couple of days, probably as soon as this podcast stops recording.
Yeah,
Would be
he'll be announced as active.
which would be great. Yeah, but like I was saying, the way this team is playing, how well kind of everything is fitting together, I absolutely see the logic in not messing with anything, not messing with the great chemistry of the team, bringing in a guy like George Hill to kind of round out the edges. I totally see the logic in all of it. But it's absolutely going to be a hotly contested playoffs because the way Brooklyn's playing and the Miami Heat got a little bit better. They've been a little bit of a mess this season, but
You could argue they got a little bit worse. They're going to be trying to integrate him,
sure.
Oladipo, and he's not.
I think he raises their ceiling, I'll say. I don't know if he actually makes them better.
Yeah, people keep
Let's just say that.
people keep having to try and like fit him into their
Mm,
established squad, and then he keeps getting traded. So
Yes.
I don't know how much it's going to really help them.
Yeah, we'll see. And then obviously, Milwaukee gets all the crap for last year's playoffs, but they're still a tough team. They're still somebody that you have to contend with. So I would say that the East is wide open, and that the Sixers are one of those teams that are capable of making it. And if they can, keep up this pace and get home court advantage, then I would say that improves their chances immensely.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think we're pretty good there, Kareem. This was the absolute antidote that you people need for your Howie Roseman sicknesses. Us
100%.
just bashing him for 45 minutes. The Eagles could nail this. It could be a disaster, but at least there's something to talk about. At least they're making it interesting.
Absolutely. You can always count on the Eagles for that.
So, all right. Later, Creamy. Have a good Saturday.
Bye, buddy.
Bye.